El tifón Sudelor ha entrado en China con vientos de hasta 150 kilómetros por hora. En algunos lugares se han registrado las mayores precipitaciones del último siglo. Las autoridades han tomado todo tipo de precauciones, como obligar a 370.000 personas a abandonar momentáneamente sus hogares, pero ni así se ha podido evitar que al menos 12 personas hayan muerto o desaparecido. A 140 kilómetros de allí, en Taiwán, 3 millones de personas siguen sin luz. El saldo de víctimas es ligeramente inferior. Se habla de al menos 6 muertos, pero los equipos de socorro buscan más víctimas entre el lodo y dentro de los coches golpeados por el tifón.
3 argentinos han muerto y varios miles se han visto afectados por las inundaciones registradas como consecuencia de un temporal al sur del país.
much does California and their farming affect the nation as well as the world?
When I was in college, I was really proud to be part of an industry that fed the world. There's nothing more essential. There's no more essential industry than food. You can live without everything else. You can live without oil. You can live without Hollywood. You can even live without teachers, but you can't live without food. It's very, very important for a country to retain its sovereignty to be able to feed itself.
If there were to be an agricultural collapse in California, what would that look like?
We see plenty of movies, don't we, where there isn't any food and stuff. Boy, I don't even want to think of that. Surely we're smarter than that, Kayla. Surely we can come together and solve these things. I know there are people, elitists, that think there's too many people on the planet, so some should just die. There's elitists that think we shouldn't be farming. They don't feel a connection to every man. These elitists need to be held responsible for the outcome of their action. That's number one. Then number two, we're not dumb people. Californians aren't dumb people. And the technology exists. We talked about that acre foot. For $500, we can desalinate an acre foot of seawater. 80% of Californians live within 50 miles of the ocean. For a fourth the cost of this train we're building, we could produce more water. Farmers would be happy to pay for it. People whose lawns are drying up. We don't need to be treated like dogs, being thrown bones by these elitists. Here, you peasants, you fight over this because there's only this much. That isn't the way Californians are. That isn't the way Americans are.
Every single human on this planet to survive needs shelter, water, and food. And love. We'll put the love in there too. Do you believe that we could be seeing the crippling of an American empire? Whether intentional or just because we're not responding to what is going on here and now?
Yes, I do believe it is intentional. At the top, with those elitists, when you get into their enclave, they want agriculture to stop in California. They'll never admit it in public, but I've been in their private groups, and that is how they feel amongst themselves. And these people wield a lot of power. How insane is that? What civilized country in the history of the world, Kayla, has ever knowingly destroyed its own food source? Where has that ever happened? If you watch the Israel Project, Israel, Australia, countries with a lot less water than we have are doing it. Israel now has more water than they know what to do with. And they're much drier than we are. So surely we're intelligent enough to work together to hold these elitists accountable for the outcome of their actions. But it's going to take an informed citizenry, so that's why I appreciate what you're doing. People need to have honest truth. And don't just listen to me. Go get your own information, This is just one farmer with mud on his boots talking from his perspective. But it's a pretty well-rounded perspective, and I'm positive what I'm saying would hold in any court, or I wouldn't say it. So we can fix this thing, and we can fix it quickly. We're an intelligent people. We have options. It's not like we have to invent the option. The options are there. We just need to have the intelligence and the courage to exercise them, and the courage to hold people responsible for the outcome of their actions. That's what I want more than anything, that people be held responsible for the outcome of their actions.
Thank you.
The EPA admitting it accidentally sent 3 million gallons of sludge into that river, which is now laced with dangerous chemicals and heavy metals, arsenic and lead among them.
This is a major, major problem. And the reason why is because of these heavy metals that were in the sludge, things like cadmium and arsenic and lead and mercury. We're talking mercury at 10 times the acceptable levels. Arsenic 800 times. Lead, there was a reading that was 11,000 times what's considered an acceptable level by the EPA. Now, these toxic metals, they can cause cancer, they can cause kidney problems, they can cause developmental problems in children.
think that there is no doubt that the U.S. economy is far stronger now than it was in 2008. What I would encourage people to evaluate is the ongoing strength and resilience of the U.S. economy.
Now, Jeffrey, it is true the US markets haven't suffered quite as badly as in Europe, but would you share that sense of optimism coming from the White House?
I'm not sure that's entirely correct, that it's sounder today than it was in 2008, but I don't think there's any reason for a panic. I mean, the problem with panic in the US is that it always results in terrible policies. I mean, all day today you've got crazy people running around blaming everything except the real problem. They blame China, they blame the existence of trade itself. We've got a lot of demagogues on the loose who are going to try to use this very normal expected market correction to try to fundamentally upset the economic order of the world. And I think that's what's mostly dangerous about it.
So how dependent is the American financial market on what happens in Asia and Europe?
Well, I think it's fairly dependent, and there's a reverse effect here, too. I mean, the dollar is the world reserve currency. After 2008, the Fed couldn't stop creating new money, trillions of new money, and that money is now all over the world. It's propped up the U.S. banking system. We've held interest rates down to 0 for 7 years. There are consequences to these kinds of policies. You can't manufacture recovery, much less prosperity, out of a printing press. When you try to do that, it's going to have terrible effects. So I would say that the problem with the Federal Reserve is now a global problem, and I would like to see monetary policy become rational and under control, and at least tolerant of some downturns, so that way we can experience a correction and get back on a solid growth path. That's something that never really happened.
La gente en Europa está completamente aterrorizada porque vemos que los líderes europeos, entre ellos los primeros ministros, no son capaces de controlar la situación. La mayoría de la gente quiere decir bien claro, por favor no vengan. ¿Por qué tienen que llegar a Europa desde Turquía? Turquía es un país seguro. Quédense ahí, es arriesgado venir, no les podemos garantizar que serán aceptados aquí.
there is also the causality. As long as the people in power do not recognize that this crisis was caused by what we in the West have done for the last 10, 15 years in the Middle East to wreak havoc on these countries, that there is a direct causality. As long as we do not recognize this and say we have to change our policies towards these countries, these things are going to go on.
Wir müssen etwas dafür tun, damit die Menschen dort bleiben können, wo sie geboren sind, in ihrer Heimat. Das ist aber nicht unsere Politik. Wir, die NATO, die Europäische Union, betreiben buchstäblich, absichtlich eine Unsicherheitspolitik in vielen Ländern der Welt. Wir schaffen tatsächlich dort, wo wir nicht ganz schnell eine uns genehme Regierung einsetzen können, durch den sogenannten Regime Change, schaffen wir lieber eine Chaoszone, und das können wir eben beobachten durch den sogenannten arabischen Frühling. Dass die Flüchtlingszahlen so steigern, das nenne ich Chaosmanagement unserer Regierung. So große Flüchtlingszahlen wie jetzt, ich spreche von einer 3/4 Million Menschen, die allein in diesem Jahr nach Europa drängen sollen, das kann nur gehen, wenn das heimlich von den Regierungen unterstützt wird. Es soll ja Unruhe geschaffen werden in Deutschland, die man dann unterdrücken kann, und dann kann man wieder demokratische Rechte abschaffen, und darum geht es hier in den letzten 20 Jahren ja insgesamt.
I've been waiting for this migrant crisis to happen because it is all part of the agenda. What this hidden hand wants is chaos, because chaos and upheaval is the easiest state in the world to manipulate. This wave of migrants from the Middle East and Africa who are heading into Europe is designed to create chaos, because what they want is a tidal wave of people heading into Europe, creating economic chaos and, of course, creating conflict between migrants and the home population.
primer ministro izquierdista, Alexis Tsipras, prometió en su ascenso al poder al pueblo griego acabar con las graves medidas anticrisis. 7 meses después alcanzó un acuerdo con la Troika para el tercer rescate financiero, que incluye más recortes económicos y privatizaciones. Ahora anuncia su dimisión y la de su gabinete, a la vez que convoca elecciones anticipadas.
Yo creo que básicamente lo que se ha encontrado Tsipras es una gran presión que se ha convertido en un auténtico chantaje. Hay que tener en cuenta esa presión que conllevaba, por ejemplo, el tema del juego que realizó el Banco Central Europeo con la liquidez de emergencia, ¿no?, que ponía a los bancos griegos en una situación absolutamente ante el abismo.
I'm here to tell you we have created something that is harming us, and it is getting out of control. Cell phones, tablets, Wi-Fi, etc. Putting it bluntly, they are damaging the living cells in our bodies and killing many of us prematurely. An example that a lot of us have in our pockets right now is the cell phone. One study shows that as cell phone usage has spread widely, the incidence of fatal brain cancer in younger people has more than tripled. We are putting cellular antennas on residential buildings and on top of hospitals where people are trying to get well. Wireless utility meters and cell towers are blanketing our neighborhoods with radiation. It is clear to many biologists that this can account for the rising cancer rates. Future generations, our children, are at risk. The biological facts are being ignored, and as a result, the safety limits are much too high. They are not protective. The World Health Organization and international standard-setting bodies are not acting to protect the public's health and well-being. International exposure guidelines for electromagnetic fields must be strengthened to reflect the reality of their impact on our bodies, and in particular, on our DNA.
I have a list of probably 25 to 30 frequencies which can induce maybe up to 50 physiological and neurological illnesses. The problem we have today is that under the direction of the United States government, most of the Western countries, they were all advised not to tell people the truth. And so what we have now is really a runaway train. This is from the Naval Surface Weapons Center, United States. We can change behavior of cells, tissues, whole organisms, in other words, any part of the body. We can have a 6 times higher fetal mortality rate, cause birth defects, and induce malignant tumours in human cells. Today, even now, Tetra is an experiment. It was between the American and the English governments that forced Tetra out. The aim is to sell Tetra to as many European countries as possible. But that is an experiment. Every police officer, every fire brigade, every ambulance worker, they are all part of the experiment, but they were never told it has a pulse frequency which is known to cause calcium efflux. In other words, the pulse frequency will affect the way your brain works, and it will affect every organ in the body and can cause tumours. The police will become more bad-tempered, more aggressive, and more violent. There will be more cancers involving the police, and the sickness rate will increase. It's phenomenal what this industry now has the power to do. You can listen to every single person's conversation all of the time, even if your phone is off. They know exactly where you are, exactly what you say, whom you're meeting with, everything. You have biological and microwave warfare. They can make you ill, they can target you. Not only can they make sounds in your ears, they can actually put spoken word into your ears and you can hear proper voices. And now the voice, depending on what they know about you, I mean, and if they've listened to your telephone calls for years, they will know who you trust and what you believe in. And then what they can do is they can then have the voice start telling you what to do. Even commit a crime, kill somebody. Think of a trampoline. If you jump on a trampoline and you bounce up and down and you get a nice steady bounce, that will be your natural resonant frequency for a bounce. If a 56-stone man jumps on and starts bouncing, you have no choice but to bounce at his pace because he will take over. Now that's what happens in the body. Your organs have their own resonant frequencies which can be taken over. All of your body pulses and fluctuates at its own speed. What you have with these vibrations is when they come in, it's like the 56-stone man jumping on your trampoline. Your body has to follow. You have no choices, nothing you can do to stop it. You've got HAARP, H-A-A-R-P. I believe there is a similar device in the Soviet Union. We've got one on Cyprus. There's probably one in China. And with HAARP, you can just beam microwaves anywhere in the world. And you can target specific houses. You can target entire countries. So we're getting to a phase now where we can literally destroy the planet. A scientist asked to see me, and he said, I've had a really bad problem, Barry. He said, I've just done an experiment for the government. He said, I was asked to test the heart and the brain against the tetra wave frequency. And he said to me, how long would it take you to do that experiment? And I said, well, 10 years. He said, do you know how long they gave me? He said, within the hour, I completed both and had time for a cup of coffee. Clearly, it came out negative and safe. And all the people were told was that the country's top scientist had tested it and found it safe. And he said, now I know this is going to cause cancer. What can I do? If I breathe a word of this, I'm going to lose my job and I'm never going to get another one. Now, that's one example. Another is George Carlo. He did a 10-year experiment for the industry. He found that microwaves caused cancer. They said, we're not going to publish. And he said, well, you must, because people need to know this. And they said, no, we've decided not to publish. And he went ahead and published anyway. Lost his job, lost his research, had his house burnt down. It just gives an example of what the industry is capable of doing. The whole communication system could be made safe. There are ways to stop the microwaves causing resonant frequency damage inside the body. But it costs money and they would have no profit. Right. So they won't do it.
Da Information immer zur Wahrnehmung führt und Wahrnehmung die Grundlage jeden Handelns ist, begründet Information letztendlich auch die soziale Realität, ebenso den Wandel dieser. Nummer 1. Kehre die Aufmerksamkeit um. Das Schlüsselelement zur Kontrolle der Gesellschaft ist es, die Aufmerksamkeit der Öffentlichkeit auf unwesentliche Ereignisse umzulenken, um sie von wichtigen Informationen über tatsächliche Änderungen durch die politischen und wirtschaftlichen Führungsorgane abzulenken. Somit kehrt die öffentliche Meinung dem wirklichen gesellschaftlichen Problem den Rücken zu, berieselt und abgelenkt durch unwichtige Angelegenheiten. Nummer 2. Erzeuge Probleme und liefere die Lösung. Diese Methode wird Problem-Reaktion-Lösung genannt. Es wird ein Problem bzw. eine Situation geschaffen, um eine Reaktion bei den Empfängern auszulösen, die danach eine präventive Vorgehensweise erwarten. Verbreite Gewalt oder zettle blutige Angriffe an, damit die Gesellschaft eine Verschärfung der Rechtsnormen und Gesetze auf Kosten der eigenen Freiheit akzeptiert. Oder kreiere eine Wirtschaftskrise, um eine radikale Beschneidung der Grundrechte und die Demontierung der Sozialdienstleistung zu rechtfertigen. Nummer 3. Stufe Änderung ab. Verschiebe die Grenzen von Änderungen stufenweise, Schritt für Schritt, Jahr für Jahr. Nummer 4. Aufschub von Änderungen. Die folgende Möglichkeit auf Akzeptanz einer von der Gesellschaft ungewollten Änderung ist es, sie als schmerzhaftes Muss vorzustellen, damit die Gesellschaft es erlaubt, sie in Zukunft einzuführen. Es ist einfacher, zukünftige Opfer zu akzeptieren, als sich von ihnen sofort auszusetzen. Nummer 5. Sprich zur Masse wie zu kleinen Kindern. Die Mehrheit der Inhalte, die an die Öffentlichkeit gerichtet werden, werden durch Art und Weise der Verkündung missbraucht. Sie sind manipuliert durch Argumente oder sogar durch einen gönnerhaften Ton, den man normalerweise in einer Unterhaltung mit Kindern oder geistig behinderten Menschen verwendet. Nummer 6. Konzentriere dich auf Emotionen und nicht auf Reflexion. Der Missbrauch des emotionalen Aspektes ist eine klassische Technik, um eine rationale Analyse und den gesunden Menschenverstand eines Individuums zu umgehen. Darüber hinaus öffnet eine emotionale Rede Tür und Tor, Ideologien, Bedürfnisse, Ängste und Unruhen, Impulse und bestimmte Verhaltensweisen im Unterbewusstsein hervorzurufen. Nummer 7. Versuche die Ignoranz der Gesellschaft aufrechtzuerhalten. Die Masse soll nicht fähig sein, die Methoden und Kontrolltechniken zu erkennen. Bildung, die der gesellschaftlichen Unterschicht angeboten wird, soll so einfach wie möglich sein, damit das akademische Wissen für diese nicht begreifbar ist. Nummer 8. Entfache in der Bevölkerung den Gedanken, dass sie durchschnittlich sei. Erreiche, dass die Bürger zu glauben beginnen, dass es normal und zeitgemäß sei, dumm, vulgär und ungebildet zu sein. Nummer 9. Wandle Widerstand in das Gefühl schlechten Gewissens um. Erlaube es, dass die Gesellschaft denkt, dass sie aufgrund von zu wenig Intelligenz, Kompetenz oder Bemühungen die einzig Schuldigen ihres Nichterfolges sind. Das System wirkt also einer Rebellion der Bevölkerung entgegen, indem dem Bürger suggeriert wird, dass er an allem Übel schuld sei und mindert damit dessen Selbstwertgefühl. Dies führt zu Depression und Blockade weiteren Handelns. Ohne Handeln gibt es nämlich keine Revolution. Nummer 10. Lerne Menschen besser kennen, als sie es selbst tun. In den letzten 50 Jahren entstand durch den wissenschaftlichen Fortschritt eine Schlucht zwischen dem Wissen, welches der breiten Masse zur Verfügung steht, und jenem, das für die schmale Elite reserviert ist. Gegenwärtig kennt das System den Menschen, den einzelnen Bürger, besser als dieser sich selbst und verfügt somit über eine größere Kontrolle des Einzelnen.
aceleración, lo ha contado Nieves. En este caso quizás estéis más de acuerdo de lo que parece.
Completamente de acuerdo. No solamente en que la aceleración es brutal, forma parte de la aceleración global que la humanidad experimenta en todos los órdenes, porque nunca ha habido un mayor incremento en la población, simultáneamente un incremento, por ejemplo, en la intensidad de los terremotos, también de cuestiones como los huracanes. Nunca ha habido una aceleración exponencial tan intensa en el conocimiento. Es decir, es absolutamente exponencial, tenemos acceso a todo el conocimiento prácticamente de la humanidad, etcétera, etcétera. Lo fascinante es que esa aceleración y todo lo que está ocurriendo aquí simultáneamente, por lo poco que sabemos que está ocurriendo en el resto del sistema solar. Hay a su manera lo que podríamos llamar, porque algunos planetas se supone que no tienen atmósfera, hay cambios climáticos. Ha habido toda una aceleración de los cambios en el último siglo. Lo que yo creo es que estamos pasando por un proceso cósmico similar al que algunos científicos atribuyen las anteriores extinciones. ¿Cuál es el problema? Según algunos científicos, como por ejemplo el geofísico ruso Dmitriev, no solo él, otros muchos, lo que dicen es que estamos en una zona del cosmos donde hay un impulso, o sea, un flujo de partículas tremendas, y que todo eso nos va a conducir a una situación de forma inmediata en la cual solo aquellas especies e individuos o grupos de individuos que sean capaces de realizar los cambios radicales que les permitan adaptarse a las condiciones cambiantes serán capaces de sobrevivir. Y esto, traducido en términos humanos, significa o llevamos a cabo una revolución psíquica ya, es decir, o nos damos la vuelta y empezamos a actuar, a pensar, a sentir de otra manera y nos sentimos completamente hermanados con la Tierra, o nos caeremos por el abismo.